On her 21st birthday in Lagos, Amara sat quietly while her friends laughed and celebrated. She felt shy, wearing the same old dress she had worn many times before. Everyone knew she was the poor girl in the family, the one who never received expensive gifts. Just when she thought the night was almost over, a lawyer walked into the small hall holding a velvet box. He explained that he had been sent by her late grandmother, who had left behind something special for her. Everyone grew curious as Amara opened the box to find a shining diamond necklace. Gasps filled the room. Some cousins whispered that it must be fake, others rolled their eyes, but Amara's hands trembled as she touched it. She couldn't believe her grandmother had remembered her in such a way. Later that night, while sitting alone in her room, she looked at the necklace more closely. She noticed a tiny lock hidden at the back. With shaking fingers, she pressed it open and found a small folded paper tucked inside. Tears filled her eyes as she read the words. Her grandmother had left her a will, giving her ownership of a large piece of property in Lagos. The same people who had once mocked her would now look at her differently. Amara cried, not just because of the fortune, but because her grandmother had believed in her future. That birthday, she didn't just receive a gift, she received a new life filled with hope and dignity. On the night before her wedding in Nairobi, Aking sat quietly in her room, feeling both excited and nervous. The house was filled with noise, relatives laughing, children running, and women preparing songs for the big day. But inside her heart, she carried a heaviness. For years, she had been reminded by her fiancé's family that she was a poor girl with no background. They only accepted her because their son insisted on marrying her. Even her own relatives treated her like a burden. As she looked at her simple suitcase in the corner, she wondered if tomorrow would truly bring happiness or just more humiliation in a new home. Suddenly, there was a knock on her door. An older woman walked in, her estranged aunt, whom she hadn't seen for years. The room went quiet. Everyone whispered outside, shocked that this woman had even come. Without saying much, her aunt placed a small gift box on Aking's bed. "This is from your late mother," she whispered with emotion. "She asked me to give it to you when you became a woman ready for her own family." Tears filled Aking's eyes. She slowly opened the box and saw a beautiful diamond necklace sparkling under the dim light. She was speechless, wondering why her aunt had kept it hidden all these years. That night, when everyone had gone to sleep, Aking sat by the window with the necklace in her hand. She admired its beauty, but as she turned it around, her fingers felt a tiny latch at the back. With trembling hands, she pressed it open and found a folded piece of paper carefully tucked inside. Her heart pounded as she opened it. The handwriting was her late mother's. It was a will. The words were clear. Her mother had left her vast properties, land, and houses in Nairobi and beyond. She was not poor, she was not a burden. She was the rightful heir to a fortune that could change her life forever. Her tears flowed uncontrollably. All the insults, all the humiliation, all the times she was treated as less, it all vanished in that moment. She wished her mother was alive to see her, to hold her hand, and to witness how her life was about to transform. By morning, word began to spread through the family. Relatives who once ignored her suddenly looked at her with respect. Even her fiancé's family, who had mocked her background, were left speechless. The girl they thought had nothing was actually richer than all of them combined. On her wedding day, Aking walked down the aisle not as the poor girl, but as a woman with dignity, wealth, and pride. She carried the necklace close to her heart, knowing it was not just jewelry. It was her mother's blessing and her new beginning. It was the eve of her wedding, but it also became the eve of a powerful rebirth in her. The day of the funeral in Accra was heavy with sorrow, but for Amma it was also filled with quiet pain. She stood at the back of the hall, wearing her old black dress, while her stepmother's relatives sat in the front with pride. They never liked her and never failed to remind her that she was just a poor girl with no future. As people gave speeches, Amma could hear some cousins whispering and laughing, saying that she would walk away from this funeral with nothing but tears. Their words cut deep, but she stayed silent, her eyes lowered. After the ceremony, the lawyer of the deceased approached the family with a small velvet case. Everyone leaned forward, expecting money or property documents to be handed to the widow and her children. To their shock, the lawyer placed the case in Amma's hand. Murmurs filled the room, and her stepmother's face darkened with anger. Amma, confused and nervous, opened the case and saw a beautiful diamond necklace lying inside. Instantly, mocking laughter broke out around her. "Is that all she gets? Just fake jewelry," one aunt scoffed. Amma's hands trembled, but she held on tightly to the necklace. Later that evening, alone in her small room, Amma turned the necklace over in her hands. Something felt unusual about it. She pressed a small hidden clasp, and to her surprise, a folded document slipped out. Her heart raced as she opened it. It was a will, signed and sealed by her stepmother's late husband. With tears streaming down her face, She read the words that named her the rightful heir to his mansion and estate. The man who had quietly loved her like a daughter had left her everything. The next morning, the truth was revealed to the entire family. Gasps and silence replaced the mocking laughter. The same people who had called her penniless now looked at her with shock and respect. Amma could hardly believe it. She had gone from being treated like nothing to inheriting a mansion. She smiled through her tears, whispering a quiet thank you to the man who had believed in her. That funeral, which began with humiliation, ended with Amma stepping into a new life filled with dignity, strength, and honor. At her graduation ceremony in Kampala, Nafula sat proudly in her gown, clutching her certificate with tears of joy in her eyes. It was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, but behind the smiles she heard the cruel whispers of her relatives. Some of them sneered, saying she had no future, that a degree would not change her poverty, and that she would always remain the poor girl of the family. Their laughter stung her heart, but she forced herself to stay strong. She promised herself that nothing would steal the joy of the moment she had worked so hard for. As the celebration went on, an old family friend approached her with a gentle smile. He held out a small gift box and said softly, "Your late father wanted you to have this today." Surprised, Nafula carefully opened the box and found a stunning diamond necklace shining inside. Gasps filled the air as her cousins rolled their eyes and mocked her again, saying she would probably sell it just to buy food. She ignored their words, holding the necklace close, not knowing it was more than just jewelry. That night, while sitting alone in her room, she studied the necklace more closely. Her fingers felt a tiny hidden latch at the back. With trembling hands, she pressed it open, and a folded document slipped out. Her heart beat wildly as she unfolded the paper. It was a will, signed by her late father. The words were clear. She was the sole heir to his company, his businesses, and all his assets. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she realized the truth. The man she had thought left her with nothing had actually secured her future in the most powerful way. The next day, when the news spread, the same relatives who mocked her stood in silence, their faces pale with shock. The poor girl with no future was now the owner of a successful company. Nafula walked with her head high, not out of pride, but out of gratitude. Her graduation was no longer just about a degree. It was the beginning of a new chapter filled with hope, dignity, and power. That day, she received not just an education, but the key to her destiny. During her engagement party in Johannesburg, Zinel smiled shyly as guests clapped and music filled the hall. She should have been happy, but inside she felt small. Her fiancé's family had made it clear they did not respect her. They whispered loudly that she was a poor girl marrying into wealth, and that their son deserved someone from a rich, powerful family. Each comment cut her heart, but she stayed silent, hoping love would be enough to carry her through. In the middle of the ceremony, an old lawyer who had once worked with her late father quietly approached her. He handed her a small necklace box, saying it had been left for her years ago. Curious and touched, Zinel opened it and found a sparkling diamond necklace. The room went silent for a moment, then her fiancé's relatives broke into mocking laughter. "Is that all? Jewelry to make her look rich?" one aunt sneered. Zinel smiled politely and placed the necklace around her neck, hiding her hurt. Later that night, when the party ended and she sat alone in her room, she took another look at the necklace. Running her fingers along the clasp, she felt a tiny hidden lock. With trembling hands, she opened it and discovered a folded document inside. Her eyes widened as she read the words. It was her late father's will. According to the document, she was the rightful owner of multiple businesses, land, and properties across Johannesburg. She was not poor. She was wealthier than everyone who mocked her that night. Tears rolled down her cheeks, not because of the money, but because her father had thought of her and trusted her with his legacy. The next morning, as the truth spread, her fiancé's family was left speechless. The girl they had insulted and looked down upon now stood above them all. Zinel walked into the day with her head high, carrying both the necklace and her father's blessing. Her engagement was no longer marked by humiliation, but by a powerful revelation that changed her life forever. She was not just marrying into wealth, she was the wealth. The festival in Dakar was alive with music, dancing, and bright colors. Awa moved through the crowd, enjoying the laughter and drums, but deep inside she felt like an outsider. Her family was poor, and everyone in the village reminded her that she had nothing to her name. Some even mocked her, saying she would always live under other people's mercy. She smiled on the outside, but their words stung her heart. As the evening grew brighter with lanterns, a mysterious old woman dressed in a long flowing cloth approached Awa. Her eyes were kind but full of secrets. Without a word, she placed a small box in Awa's hands and whispered, "This belongs to you. Guard it well." Before Awa could ask anything, the woman disappeared into the crowd. Curious and a little afraid, Awa opened the box and found a sparkling diamond necklace. The people around her gasped, some in envy, others in disbelief. She must have stolen it, a cousin sneered. Awa held it close, confused but grateful for the strange gift. That night, when the festival quieted down, she sat alone under the stars and studied the necklace. Her fingers discovered a hidden clasp at the back. With shaky hands, she opened it and pulled out a folded document. Her eyes widened as she read the words. It was a will. The document stated clearly that Awa was the rightful landowner of the very village where she was mocked. Her late grandfather, whom many thought had left nothing, had entrusted everything to her through this hidden will. Tears filled her eyes as she realized the truth. The land, the homes, the farms, everything belonged to her. The same people who laughed at her would now look at her with respect. By the next morning, when the news spread, the entire village was in shock. The poor girl they looked down on had become the owner of it all. Awa smiled softly, holding the necklace close to her chest. The festival that began with shame ended with a miracle. She was no longer just a girl in the crowd. She was the landowner, the true heir, and the heartbeat of her village. In a quiet hospital room in Lusaka, Chipo sat beside her grandfather's bed, holding his frail hand. The machines beeped softly, and she fought back tears, knowing his time was short. He looked at her with gentle eyes, the same eyes that had watched her grow since childhood. Despite the whispers from relatives who called her the poor granddaughter, she had never left his side. She cared for him when others stayed away, and that love was all he wanted in his final days. With weak hands, her grandfather reached for a small velvet box on the bedside table. He pressed it into her palm and whispered, "This is for you, my child. Keep it close and never doubt your worth." Chipo opened the box and gasped at the sight of a beautiful diamond necklace. She hugged him tightly, whispering thank you, though her heart ached with the fear of losing him. Later that night, he passed away peacefully, leaving her broken but holding tightly to his final gift. When she returned home, Chipo sat alone with the necklace, remembering his words. As she traced her fingers along the clasp, she felt a tiny hidden lock. With trembling hands, she opened it and pulled out a folded document. Her eyes widened in shock. It was her grandfather's will. The paper clearly stated that she was the sole inheritor of his fortune, his houses, land, and businesses. Tears streamed down her face as she realized the truth. While others chased wealth, her grandfather had trusted her with everything because she had shown him love. The next day, when the news spread through the family, those who had mocked her were left speechless. The girl they thought would remain poor was now the heir to a fortune greater than they ever imagined. Chipo held the necklace close to her heart, not out of pride for the wealth, but out of love for the man who had seen her true value. That hospital visit, filled with sorrow, had become the beginning of a new life of dignity, respect, and blessings. The market in Mombasa was crowded with voices, colors, and the smell of fresh spices. Amina walked through the stalls carrying a small basket, trying to ignore the harsh laughter of her cousins. They mocked her loudly, calling her the broke girl, who would never achieve anything in life. Their words stung, but she kept her head down, pretending not to care. She had grown used to their insults, but deep inside, she longed for a day when she would finally prove them wrong. In the middle of the busy market, a kind family friend approached her with a gentle smile. He handed her a small velvet box and said, "Your late father wanted you to have this." Surprised, Amina opened it and gasped when she saw a sparkling diamond necklace. The crowd around her grew curious, and her cousins rolled their eyes, laughing again. "What good is jewelry to someone who cannot even afford food?" one of them sneered. Amina said nothing, holding the necklace close to her chest, feeling a strange connection to her late father. That evening, when she returned home, she sat quietly and studied the necklace. As her fingers traced the back of it, she noticed a hidden clasp. With trembling hands, she pressed it and pulled out a folded paper tucked inside. Her heart raced as she opened it. It was her father's will. The words were clear. She was the rightful owner of the family business, the very business her cousins boasted about controlling. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she realized her father had trusted her to carry on his legacy. The next day, when the truth came out, her cousins stood in shock, unable to speak. The girl they called broke was now the legal owner of everything they had used to look down on her. Amina walked through the same market with her head held high, no longer ashamed but filled with pride and gratitude. What began as a day of insults ended as the moment her life completely changed. The necklace was not just a gift, it was the key to her future. On Christmas night in Addis Ababa, the house was filled with laughter, music, and the smell of food. Yet for Hannah, the evening was painful. While her relatives enjoyed the feast, she was treated like a servant, asked to fetch water, clear plates, and serve food. Some even whispered that she didn't belong there, that she was just a poor girl with nothing. She forced a smile, but inside her heart ached. Christmas, a time of joy for others, had always been a reminder of how little respect she received in her own family. When it was time for gifts, Hannah sat quietly in the corner, not expecting anything. To her surprise, one of the elders handed her a small velvet box. "This is from your late mother," he said softly. Gasps filled the room, and the relatives exchanged curious looks. Hannah's hands shook as she opened the box. Inside was a beautiful diamond necklace that glittered under the lights. Her cousins laughed cruelly, saying, "Jewelry won't change her life." Hannah held it close, not replying, but tears welled in her eyes as she thought of her mother. Later that night, when the house grew quiet, Hannah examined the necklace carefully. Her fingers brushed against a tiny hidden lock at the back. With trembling hands, she pressed it open, and a folded paper slipped out. Her breath caught as she unfolded it. It was her late mother's will. The words were clear. Her mother had left her the family mansion and properties, making her the true heir. Hannah broke down in tears, feeling her mother's love surround her even from beyond the grave. The next morning, when the truth was revealed, the same relatives who had treated her like a servant were left stunned and silent. The girl they had mocked now owned the very house they were sitting in. Hannah walked through the rooms with her head high, her heart filled not with pride, but with gratitude. That Christmas, she didn't just receive a gift, she received dignity, respect, and a future her mother had always wanted for her. It was the Christmas that changed everything. In Kigali, the courtroom was filled with tension as relatives argued loudly, demanding their share of the property. At the center sat Nyasha, quiet and nervous, wearing the same simple dress and an old diamond necklace around her neck. Her greedy uncles and cousins accused her of having no right to anything, claiming she was just a poor girl who deserved nothing. The judge listened carefully, while Nyasha kept her head bowed, holding back tears. When it was finally her turn to speak, Nyasha touched the necklace her late father had given her. She remembered his words. "One day this will protect you." With trembling hands, she opened a hidden clasp at the back of the necklace and pulled out a folded paper. The courtroom fell silent. She handed it to the judge, and everyone waited breathlessly as he read it aloud. It was her father's will, naming Nyasha as the true heir to all his properties and businesses. Gasps filled the room. The same relatives who had dragged her to court stood frozen in shock, their arguments crushed in an instant. The judge looked up and declared firmly that the case was closed. Everything rightfully belonged to Nyasha. Tears streamed down her face as relief and gratitude washed over her. She walked out of the courtroom with her head high, no longer the poor girl they mocked, but the rightful owner of her father's legacy. That necklace was not just jewelry, it was the key to her victory, her dignity, and her new beginning.